All right, I'm Mark Sutphin. I work with Virginia Cooperative Extension in Frederick County, serving the northern Shenandoah Valley, um, really with all things horticulture for a five-county region at the northern part of the state. This webinar series is part of the Extension Master Gardener overall webinar series, but also in conjunction as a VCE small scale fruit webinar series that we're doing, and it is late September. It is apple picking season, and we're going to focus on apples today. We're fortunate to have Dr. Sherif Sherif with us. Certainly appreciate him giving some time again in what's a really busy and hectic part of the season. But we're thankful to have him. He is our extension specialist on the tree fruit side of things with Virginia Cooperative Extension. He's an associate professor in the School of Plant and Environmental Sciences with Virginia Tech. He's housed at the Alson H. Smith Agricultural Research and Extension Center in Winchester, Virginia. Again, this region here in the northern part of the state is long known for historical apple production in Virginia, and so he's joined us today and going to offer some tips on the successful growing of apples in the small scale, small orchard setting. Would ask that everyone please hold your questions until the end, or feel free to put them in the chat, and Stephanie Ramilacek and I will help manage that, either answering in the chat room or prompting Dr. Sherif at the end of the presentation. And I would also note, I don't know that it's been fully advertised, but the next small scale fruit series webinar is going to be on October 30th at 2 p.m. With Dr. Drew Harner. He's actually based at the same AREC that Dr. Sherif is, and Drew will be giving us a presentation on growing grapes in the home and small scale settings. So, Dr. Sherif, I'm going to turn it over to you. Again, thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Mark, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today's session. And my goal in this webinar really is to give you kind of practical, you call it research-based guidance on how to grow apple trees in Virginia, whether you are a homeowner with just a few trees or a small-scale orchardist. This should help you. So I will go through the most important decision that sets the foundation for healthy, productive trees. I will go through the selection of the right site, to understanding soil and variety selection. And by the end, I'm hoping that you will have a clear sense of what matters the most in establishing an orchard or a home garden. So with this, let's talk first about one of the most critical factors when choosing an orchard site, which is air drainage and frost protection. You need to know that apples are extremely sensitive to spring frost, especially during the bloom time. And you need also to know that the cold air behaves like water. It flows downhill and settles in low areas, creating what we call frost pockets, as you can see in the image on the right. So when you are scouting for a site, you need to first avoid flat valley bottoms or bowl-shaped depressions or areas blocked by dense woods or fences. If your site is bordered by wood, you need to consider leaving some gaps or channels to let that cold air escape so it doesn't accumulate around your canopy. So the ideal orchard site should be in a kind of rolling or elevated land with a gentle slope. We talk about like 4 to 8%. If this is a commercial orchard, it is good also to avoid any steepy slope for the machinery to still operate. This slope should help the cold air drains away from your trees, and you need to believe it or not, with only few elevation, it can make a difference between a full crop and a frost disaster. So the second thing is when selecting an orchard site, slope, wind, and microclimate are key factors to think about. You can believe that it doesn't matter if the slope is south facing or north facing, but it really does matter. The south facing slopes tend to warm up earlier in the spring. And although that sounds good, but it also means that buds swell and bloom sooner, which can make them more susceptible to late frost. Northern facing slopes, on the other hand, they bloom a little bit earlier, later, which in some years can help reduce frost risk. Hilltops provide good frost protection because cold air drains away, as I mentioned, but the trade-off in that regard is they could be more exposed to harsh wind. If you have wind breaks can help, but also it needs to be placed carefully so they don't block the flow of the cold air around the canopy. If you are thinking about large water bodies like lakes or rivers, whether this could be helpful, yes. Water moderates temperature and reduces frost severity. So the ideal site is elevated slope with good air drainage, some natural protection from wind, and a balanced microclimate. This is the best orchard site you need to think about. When it comes to soil, the single most important factor for apple trees is drainage. Roots like us, they need oxygen, and if the soil stays waterlogged for more than a week or so, the roots will begin to suffocate and die eventually. You need to know if your site has a good drainage or not, and there is a simple way to test if your site has a good drain. This is by digging a 2-foot hole and fill it with water, particularly after rain or so, and then wait for about 2 to 3 days. If it drains in about 2 to 3 days, that's good enough. This is a good sign that you have a good site. If it takes more than 3 days, it means that you may run through some issues later on. The root depth is another major issue. You want to at least have 18 inches of good soil, but ideally we talk about 3 feet or more before hitting a rock or a hard pan layer. Shallow soils limit growth and they can shorten the lifespan of the orchard. You need to think about it at the beginning. If you have a heavy soil, I can say raising a tree on berms or drainage tiles, this can improve conditions, but this also comes with a higher cost. So the drainage of the soil, this is something you need to think seriously about it. This is the most important factor after elevation. Fertility is another thing. You might think that, okay, if I have a good, strong soil, sorry, you free meeting. You might think that having a strong soil, this is good, but frankly, moderate fertility is ideal. If nitrogen levels in your soil is too high, you will see a lot of vigorous shoot growth, but this will come at the expense of fruit production. Too much fertility also means is that you might have more diseases like fire blight or summer rots. We also say that the best soil for apples is deep, well-drained loam or sandy loam soil. This is the best one. Moderate soil, on the other hand, it can be fixed later on. Mark, I feel like I hear some echo.
I'm muting as they pop up.
Okay. So on the other hand, the soil with medium fertility are much easier to manage. And if the tree shows some signs of nutrient deficiency later on, fertilizers can always be added. So I would look for a moderate fertility more than a strong soil to plant an apple tree. Soil pH. This is another major factor when selecting your site. Uh, Apple trees prefer a slightly acidic soil with a pH between 6 to 6.5. And here in Virginia, our soil tended to be more acidic, in the range of 5.5 to 6. And in that regard, you need lime application. Lime application you could apply it after in the fall time or about like December, January time. Getting the pH right is very critical because it can affect nutrient availability around the soil. If the pH is too low and it is too acidic, it can lead to aluminum toxicity. It can lead to deficiency in some major elements like calcium and magnesium. And both of these are essential for healthy growth and fruit quality as well. So what you can do at the beginning, besides the drainage, besides the elevation, besides the soil quality, is to look for the soil test. You can use the extension office closer to you. If you are extension agent, you're already better than me in this. You know how to collect soil, how to send it to Virginia Tech for soil analysis. The good news is once you get the soil analysis, it can give you some guidance on how much nitrogen you need to apply, how much magnesium, how much potassium, how much lime you need to apply. And it can give you indication also about the soil pH. Oh, so this is a typical soil test report you would receive from Virginia Cooperative Extension. As you can see, it gives you the pH. It gives you how much lime you need to apply, if any. It gives you how much nitrogen or potassium you need to apply per acre, which is a good thing to start with. Okay, what you see here is something maybe some of you know about and maybe some not, but this is called Web Soil Survey. This is a free online tool from the USDA. It lets you look up the soil information for any location in the United States of America. You can just like type your address or you zoom in on a map and you select your location and it gives you tons of information about your soil, uh, how well those soil drain, how fertility they are, whether they are good for planting trees, gardens, or orchard. I like this very much. It helps me a lot in my location here or when somebody approaches me to ask. So this is something you can see here in Frederick County. I just like zoomed in some location and I received the report later on. So this is an example of a web soil survey report for Frederick County, Virginia. As you can see, it tells you tons of details about soil like slope, texture, drainage, depth, water holding capacity. It tells you that the slope here is between 2 to 7%. It is well drained. What else? More than 80 inches deep, which is a good. It also tells you it is considered prime farmland. So this type of report, besides the soil analysis test, I think between these two, it can give you the best guidance and the guys' decision about planting, irrigation, and long-term management. If you are extension agent, I think if you are approached by a grower or some homeowner who wants to plant some trees, whether these are apple trees or stone fruits, this is the best site to go to first. and it can give you a good guidance about different stuff about the site of your planting. Oh, the other thing is variety selection. We have thousands of varieties of apples, but not every apple will thrive here in Virginia. You need to remember that we have warm, humid nights in the summer, which is not good at all for apple production or fruit production in general. One, it means like we will have tons of diseases, especially summer rots and the fire blight, but also it means that color and the firmness of certain apples will not be at the best. Generally, we say the best fruit quality is found in the mountain and the foothills. We talk about elevation above 800 feet. This is the best one. If you are in Western Virginia, you are lucky because cooler nights make varieties like Honeycrisp and some of the late apple varieties perform better in Western Virginia because they are in higher elevation. If you are in Eastern Virginia and lower elevation, you need to think more about heat tolerance because Eastern Virginia is about like 1 week to 2 weeks earlier than Western part or central part. And they are a little bit warmer than the higher elevation in Southwest Virginia or Central Virginia. So for the eastern part, you need to think about heat-tolerant varieties like Arkansas Black, Rome Beauty, or you think about some golden and yellow varieties that don't require cold nights for developing the red color. So you can think about Golden Delicious, Ginger Gold, and Granny Smith also can work over there. Southwest Virginia is good for growing apple varieties. They have a mix of higher elevation and cooler conditions. So you can grow a broader range of varieties, including Honeycrisp, by the way. But they don't like Honeycrisp in Southwest for some reason. But it can grow there very well. Pink Lady is very good over there. Gold Rush is good. Fuji is good. Red Delicious is good. Even Macintosh type like Empire and Cortland, it is very good in Southwest Virginia. So we talked about the selection based on location, whether you are in Western Virginia, Western part of Virginia, or in the East part or in the Southwest, which are the three main locations. So another strategy, if you are a homeowner or have a small orchard, is to mix between early, mid, and late season cultivars. This way you can extend fresh fruit availability for months. So some early varieties like Lodi ripen in July, and these are great for cooking. Some mid-season varieties like Gala, they are harvested in August. Golden Delicious in September. These are excellent for fresh eating. Frankly, Golden Delicious is excellent for everything. And then you have late keepers like Wine Sap, York, Fuji, Pink Lady. These are very good for storage. You can store them into winter and even early spring. Ripening dates will shift depending on where you are. Eastern Virginia, as I mentioned, is often 1 to 2 weeks earlier than the mountain region. Variety selection based on the usage, this is another thing. So for fresh eating varieties, you want something that is crisp, sweet, or sweet tart dessert apples like Gala or Ginger Gold. For cooking or sauce, Lodi is a classical choice. It has a best mix between tart and the sugar. It softens down into a smooth applesauce. Golden Delicious really is excellent for different things, especially fresh eating and apple pie. It can also be used for cider as well. Cider varieties including Wine Sap, Harrison, Yates, These are good for hard cider and sweet cider. So ideally, for a small orchard, if your extension agent approached by someone wants to have a small orchard, you need to give some indications that to grow different varieties with different harvest window, different usage. This way, your orchard will serve as a multiple needs and give you flexibility. So this is my bottom line. So this table here provides kind of a guidance on apple varieties grown in Virginia. It can give you the typical harvest date, the primary usage like fresh eating or processing or storage, other important details as well. So it is a good quick reference to help you choose varieties that fit your goals and the harvest window. But you need to be careful about the harvest date because these are based on the Blacksburg area. If you are asking about disease resistance this is very important, especially here in Virginia, as I mentioned. Virginia's humid climate and warm summer, this allows for tons of fungal and bacterial diseases to thrive. You must have heard about some apple varieties that are resistant to apple scab. Yes, these varieties were developed to be resistant to apple scab in different breeding programs. These include Liberty, Enterprise, Gold Rush, Red Free, Bixie Crunch. If you didn't hear before about Bixie Crunch, I would recommend that you try to review it. Ask about it. It is a very good, crisp, scab-resistant variety. I love it. My kids love it. It is a little bit more sweet than something like Honeycrisp. It has less acid, more sugar. So these are great options if you want to reduce the number of fungicide spray, or if you are interested in a low spray or organic system. But you need to be very careful here because these are scab resistant. It is only one disease. These resistant varieties can still be affected by summer diseases like sooty blotch and the fruit rots. Okay, so it doesn't mean that because they are scab resistant, they will be resistant to everything. So you need to pick your fights, kind of. Fire blight is another major concern. Varieties like Gala, Jonathan, Granny Smith, York, these are very susceptible to fire blight. Enterprise and Liberty, these are kind of moderate resistance. So again, if you are considering organic or a low spray, then you need to think about these varieties. Yes, maybe they are not the best in terms of eating quality, but it's a choice you need to make. Okay. So these are the table. This is the table show important details about scab-resistant apple varieties and their susceptibility to major diseases like apple scab, cedar apple rust, powdery mildew, and fire blight. So if you are selecting a variety that is resistant to apple scab, it could be also having some resistance to cedar apple rust. Like Red Free is resistant to both. And it has some moderate resistance to fire blight as well. This information is based on Penn State research, but it applies very well to our conditions here in Virginia. Okay. Rootstock selection is another thing. When we talk about apple trees, almost all of them are grafted into a rootstock. If you will get it from a nursery or if you will get it from some major distributor like Home Depot or any other store, these are grafted trees. And the rootstock in that regard controls the ultimate size of the tree, how vigorous it is, how quickly it begins to produce fruit, even how long the tree can live. So you need to also consider the rootstock because it can contribute to the production and longevity and management of the orchard, as I will explain later on. Okay, so you might hear about standard trees and semi-dwarfing trees and dwarf trees. So these are based on the rootstock. Standard rootstock, these are mostly seedlings, grow into a very large tree, often reaching between 18 to 25 feet tall. They take 6 to 10 years before they start bearing fruit. So this is something you need to think about. But from the advantage side, this has a good anchorage. So they don't need staking. They are permanent. They can live 35 years or more. So these are good in that regard. But the trade-off also, they require a lot of space, sometimes 30 feet between trees. They are harder to prune. They are harder to spray. They have a dense canopy. So any spray you apply, it is hard to penetrate and cause some effect. It is hard to harvest as well because they are going to be, as I mentioned, 18 to 25 feet tall. So this would be my least preferred choice if you are going with a small orchard or something in your backyard. Semi-dwarfing rootstock, on the other hand, this falls in between the standard trees and dwarf trees. Trees are usually 12 to 18 feet tall. They come into fruiting earlier. You can talk about like 4 to 7 years after planting. Some examples include M7. This is just 70 to 80% of the full size. It fruits early, about like 4 to 5 years after planting. It has a weak anchorage, so staking is needed for the first few years. But once it's established, it can grow without any staking or trellis or anything. MM111, this is something you need to consider a lot. This is a semi-dwarfing. It can give you 80 to 90% full size of the tree. It's hardy, drought tolerant. It develops a strong anchorage without long-term staking. So this is one of the best choices for me for a homeowner or for a home garden, I mean, or a small orchard. MM106, this is another semi-dwarfing, but I don't like it. It is not recommended for Virginia. So if you have something like this in the nursery, don't go and get it. It is highly susceptible to cooler rot and Phytophthora root rots. And our soil is mostly wet. So this will be the least preferred choice for me. Okay, dwarf rootstocks. These are, for some people, especially the commercial orchardists, these are the most popular choice for homeowners as well and many commercial orchard because they give you a compact tree that is easy to harvest, easier to manage. They also bear fruit quickly within 2 to 4 years after planting. You can get a fruit, a full crop, not a full crop. You can get a crop. Within 5 years, you will have a full crop. The trees grow up to 8 to 12 feet tall, can start producing in just 2 to 4 years, as I mentioned. But the big catch here is they don't have a strong anchorage. The root system is so brittle and shallow. You cannot just plant them and walk away. These trees will need a permanent support, whether this is individually staker beside them or trellis if you put them in rows, a trellis system. M9 is one of the best examples of dwarfing trees. This is the most widely used dwarfing rootstock. It's precocious, meaning it fruits very early. but also it has shallow roots and must be staked or trellised for the entire life. It is not only for the first few years. M26 is slightly larger than M9. People like it. It goes around 10 to 12 feet tall. Also fruits very quickly, but it is far more susceptible to fire blight than M9. So this is a kind of a poor choice for Virginia growers. More recently, you will hear about some rootstocks like Geneva rootstocks. These came from Geneva, New York. They are resistant to fire blight, resistant to woolly apple aphid, resistant to Phytophthora root rot. They came in different sizes, like they have a dwarf, they have a semi-dwarf, but all of them, they require staking as well because the root system is very shallow. This is another thing you need to think about. Okay, so these are kind of the difference between Geneva and Moling or M series. So if you know M9 and you need to shift it to the same size, you can go with Geneva 41, G41, or G214. If you like M26 or you have an idea about M26, but you need a Geneva rootstock because it is resistant to fire blight, then you can go with G935 or Geneva 202. If you heard about M7 or MM111 that I described and I said it is good, then you can shift it to Geneva 969. But here is another catch, okay? When I say resistant to fire blight or Phytophthora root rot, it is the rootstock itself is resistant, not the scion variety. So Honeycrisp on Geneva 214 is still susceptible to fire blight, is still susceptible to root rots itself. But the rootstock itself is resistant to fire blight. It means that if you have a severe fire blight infection and you didn't control it, you can have the whole tree of Honeycrisp dying down to the rootstock, but the rootstock will not die. I'm not sure what is the what is the benefit of all this system, but anyway. Okay. So you might ask right now, okay, Sherif, these are lots of information about rootstock. What is the practical tips for home orchard? Okay. So it's really up to you. I give you some information to guide you, but if you will go with some dwarfing rootstock, the only catch about this one, beside all the good stuff they have, including the compact size, easy to harvest, you will see fruits after 2 to 4 years after planting. The only thing is about staking and trellising them. You need to have a kind of support besides the tree. Also, they are very sensitive to drought, so you need to keep watering them so often. M7 is a semi-dwarfing option. I like it, but it needs staking in the first few years. But after this, it holds itself very much. MM111, if it is a home garden or a small orchard, is my best choice. This is a vigorous semi-dwarfing. It is hardy, drought tolerant, and doesn't need staking at all. Okay, so if you are extension agent, you need to provide all the options so the people know that Geneva rootstock existing as well in case they like to get something that is resistant to fire blight or root rots. Okay, this table here is very beneficial also to give you some idea about space requirement. If you have a standard versus a semi-dwarfing versus a dwarf rootstock, the minimum distance between trees, and also it gives you approximate yield per plant as a bushel. So A semi-dwarfing will give you a 4 bushel per tree. The dwarf rootstock will give you 2 bushels. It gives you indication about the bearing age, how many years after planting you should expect to see some fruits. It also giving you some indication about life expectancy. So this also can guide your choices. Okay. Now you selected the site, which is the best site, including the elevation. You consider the soil pH, you consider drainage. You selected the best variety for your location, for the harvest time, for the purpose. You selected the rootstock. Now it is the time of planting. Okay. So when it comes to planting apple trees, timing is very important. In Virginia, we have 2 windows. One is the late fall and one is early spring. Late fall planting, we talk about October to November, so about like a month from now, you need to start planting trees. This works very well once the tree have gone into dormancy. And this should start after the first hard frost, okay? The advantage of this one is you keep or you give advantage for the root to begin establishing during the winter time. But the disadvantage of this one, if you have some harsh winter, some of these trees can die because of the cold injury. Spring planting is my favorite. This one should start by about late February into March. This is another good option. The key is to get the trees into the ground before bud break as soon as the soil is workable. But also you need to avoid planting in frozen or waterlogged soil at this time, because this will stress the root system and it will make it harder for the tree to establish. Okay, the golden rule in planting is only plant trees when they are dormant, when there is no any active growth. Don't try to plant them in summertime, because this will make them susceptible to the winter injury later on. If you receive a bare root trees from nursery or from any other location or any other plant supplies, and it is not the right time to plant them, the good tip is to don't let the roots dry out or freeze. You can either store them in a cool place like unheated garage, or you can heal them in by covering the roots with some moist sawdust or some soil in a shaded place in your backyard. But the thing is, keep them wet and keep them cold until you plant them. Okay, now about the planting itself. What you need to do to plant a tree in your backyard or in your location, first you need to clear the sod or grass in a wide circle around the planting spot. Then you need to dig a hole that is deep enough to feed the whole root system of the tree. Some trees, by the way, when you receive it and it is only a year-old tree, the root system is not too big. But some providers can give you a 2- and 3-year-old tree. These have relatively bigger root system. So you need to dig the hole based on the depth of your root system. Okay, and for the width of the hole, it should be twice as much as the root spread. It should be twice as much. This gives the root plenty of loose soil around it to grow very well. If you see any broken or dead roots, you need to trim them off before planting and keep only the healthy roots for planting. The other trick, I told you about grafting. There is a graft union, which is the distance between the rootstock and the scion. These are the graft union here. This graft union should be about 2 to 3 inches above the soil line. This is another trick. Don't dig them into the hole. These should have about like 2 to 3 inches above the soil line. Then after you put this in the hole, you need to backfill with the original topsoil. Don't add compost, don't add fertilizers at this stage at all. Fertilizers and compost, you can add them later on, after 2 weeks at least after planting. Okay? Then you just like water them and keep them for 2 weeks. Then you start to apply fertilizer after the fact. Mulching after planting. Mulching and aftercare are what help the tree to settle and thrive. Mulch is useful. It can hold soil moisture. It helps suppress weeds. You can use wood chips or straw that all work very well. But the thing is, don't pile any mulch closer to the trunk. It can give you some rotting to the tree trunk as well. So just like keep them about like at least 1 foot away from the main trunk. Watering is also very critical, especially at the beginning. Keep watering them almost every week. You need to keep the soil very wet. Okay, now to the fun part about training and pruning. I know this is the most tricky part when planting a tree. And I think with Mark Sutphin and with others, we might plan some workshops later on in the winter time, maybe around March, to help give some hands-on training on how to plant or how to make the first training of a new planting. We'll talk about this. Okay, so after you plant a tree, there are 2 choices, okay? One is to get a web, which is unfeathered or unbranched tree. This is 1 year old, mostly. Or to get a feathered or branched tree, which is about like 2 year old or more with some branches. For the web, you need to cut it back to 30 to 36 inches above the ground. This heading of the main web will stimulate side shoots to grow, and these side shoots will be the permanent scaffold later on. If you are planting a feathered tree, then you need to select the straightest, strongest shoot as your central leader, then head it back slightly, not too much, again to the same size, 30 to 36 inches above the ground. Then you need to look at the branches. Anything below 18 inches or below your knee, you need to remove it completely. It is of no use to you. Then the other branches with a good angle, these branches, you will select among them 3 to 6 branches with a good angle. This will be your permanent scaffold. You either keep them, or my advice, you need to shorten them by 1/3, because this will keep them stronger for the next season. After this, any other weak or crowded or narrow-angled branch, it should be removed by a thinning cut. Thinning cut means you need to remove it completely. Don't keep in a stub or any part of it. Okay? Let me say this again. Any branch, if you have a branched or feathered tree, anything below 18 inches, remove it completely with a thinning cut. Select 3 to 6 good angled branches, shorten them 1/3. Okay? Anything else, you need to remove it in the first year. If it is a web, you're lucky. You just like need to hit it to 30 to 36 inches above the ground, like this one. Okay, now coming to the first dormant season after planting. This is the first important, the really important checkpoint in training your apple trees. Okay, because this is where you start selecting the permanent structure of the tree. I will explain something, we call it a central leader, by the way, which is the major or the main training system is called the central leader. By the end of the first growing season, and as you go to the winter, you will have several new shoots coming. So during the first winter pruning, you want to select 4 to 6 well-spaced branches to keep as your main scaffold, okay? This will be your first tier, around here. So these ones should be 3 to 6 or 4 to 6 permanent shoots around. And for the main central leader, you need to hit it a little bit, about 30 inches above the new scaffold. So if you expect the new scaffold will be here, the new tier of scaffold will be here, you need to hit it here. I need to remove this one, okay. So at the end of the day, for the central leader, you need to just like hit it just above the new tier of branches, which should be here later on. For these branches, you need to put something like spreaders. If they are not in a good angle, you just like put some spreaders around them to keep them about 35 to 60 angle, 60-degree angle. This is the best one. Some people can hit some of these shoots. I don't recommend it, okay? But it's up to you. If you will hit it slightly. Okay. Not sure how to avoid this one. Okay, now coming to the second growing season. In the second growing season, you will have a tree like this. Anything below the 18 inches, it needs to be removed. So this one should be removed, okay? Anything else, don't make any pruning during the growing season, which is about starting from April till the end of the summertime. But what you can do, you can put some spreaders here to keep the angle at 60 degrees, which is the best. Now you have your second tier, you put some spreaders as well. By the winter time, do the same thing. Put some spreaders if needed in the first tier of scaffold, and put some spreaders here as well to keep the angle. If you want another tier, then you need to hit the central leader. You need to cut it back by about 30 inches above the next tier. So if you expect the next branches will be here, keep 30 inches and make a cut. By the end of the second dormant season, you will have 2 tiers, very good 2 tiers of scaffold. This one was 3 to 6 scaffold, and this one was another 2 to 4. So by the end of the year 2, the goal is to have a central leader, dominant, and you have a scaffold around 6 to 18 inches apart and strong conical shape that will carry the tree into maturity. This is what you need to finish by the second year after planting. It could be easier here in the drawing, but in reality, it's a little bit tricky, by the way. I know this. Okay. As the tree grow into the third year and beyond, your job will be just like to keep reinforcing the central leader system with one leader in the middle and strong scaffold and permanent limbs around it. You want to maintain the central leader dominance. You need to maintain the angle of the scaffold to 60-degree orientation. This is very good. And the general rule of thumb is to keep the upper branches shorter than the lower ones to keep this pyramid shape or conical shape. fertilization of young and bearing apple trees. In the first year, it's important to not to fertilize at the time of planting. As I mentioned, any fertilization or compost you put in the hole, it can burn the roots. So you just have to wait for about 2 weeks after planting. Then you need to apply small amount of nitrogen to encourage growth without burning the young apple trees. A typical approach, what we are doing is 1/3 pound of 10-10-10 fertilizer, which is 10 nitrogen, 10 potassium, 10 phosphorus fertilizer, and you put it about 2 to 3 times during the season. The other thing I'm doing, sometimes I don't use any ground application. I use a foliar application of urea. You can apply up to 5 pounds of urea about 4 times to 5 times with about 2 weeks intervals. This is very good. From the second year onward, the rule of thumb is 1/10 of a pound of actual nitrogen per year per tree. Okay? Up to 3/4 to 1 pound of mature standard tree. But in Virginia, growers often use around 1/4 pound of 1644 per year of age. So if you have a 4-year-old, you need to put 1 pound of 1644. And it's just up to the maturity. This is a kind of the typical application of fertilizers per tree here in Virginia. What is the best timing? I would say apply it just like late February to March, which is about like 3 to 4 weeks before bud break. Don't add any fertilization during the summertime because this can push shoots and can push some vegetative growth, which becomes sensitive later on to winter damage in the fall and winter time. How to apply it? If it is ground application, you need to spread fertilizers evenly under the canopy. Start from 1 foot from the trunk and to go just beyond the drip line. This is the best way because this is how the roots are established and can absorb the nutrient efficiently. So now talking about nutrient deficiencies that you can see, one of the best indicators of the health of your tree is the annual shoot growth. A mature tree should put about 8 to 18 inches of new growth every single year. If you see much less, such as only couples of inches of pale leaves, this makes indications that you have nitrogen deficiency and you need to apply nitrogen. But if you see a lot of strong water sprouts, more than 18 inches of growth, it means that you have more nitrogen than needed and you need to reduce it back. Again, anything less than 3 inches of growth, it means nitrogen deficiency. Anything above 12 or more inches or 18 inches, it could be indication of you are adding too much nitrogen, which is not also good. Not good for fruiting because there is a relationship between vegetative growth and reproduction growth. So if you have too much vegetative, you don't expect too much of a crop. Or if you have a crop, the quality will not be as much because the canopy will be so dense, so you will don't have a good color or a good firmness or a good sugar as well. If you have a deficiency in nitrogen, it is easy. You will have some yellow and pale leaves, mainly in the old leaves and old shoots. And this is easy to discover. Iron deficiency is quite opposite. Only the young leaves will start to be yellow, and it has some yellowing between the veins of the young leaves. It is not in the old leaves. So the difference between nitrogen and iron deficiency will be in the younger leaves. Nitrogen will be in the older leaves, in the bottom of the branch. And both of them will be yellow. We'll call it chlorosis. Potassium deficiency is also characteristic. You will see that you will have scorches and burning around the edge of the leaf, and maybe inside you might have some yellowing as well. Calcium deficiency will appear on the fruit like bitter bits or corky spots, especially in some varieties like Honeycrisp. And the boron also will cause some issue, including reduced pollination and fertilization. Oh, weed management. So controlling weeds and grass around apple tree, this is another critical thing, especially when the trees are still young. Weeds not only compete with the tree roots for water and nutrients, but also they harbor rodents and rabbits inside them. So weed management is very important for commercial orchard or home gardens. There are several ways for weed management. Mulching is good. You need to put mulching with 2 to 4 inches of wood chips or straw or pine bark. This is very effective, okay? But you need to keep the mulch about few inches away from the main trunk, as I mentioned, because this can lead to some rotting of the trunk, or it can harbor some voles and mice underneath. Some growers, I know that they even remove the mulch in the late fall in order to reduce any mice activity during winter time. This is a very good strategy. Okay, yes, it is laborious, but if you have only a few trees in your backyard, I think this is doable and it is needed. So mulch is good, but first don't make it closer to the trunk. And also you need to remove it in the late fall because it can have some mice activity and the vole activity underneath. Plastic and landscape fabric is also another option. The good thing about these ones, they don't tie up any nitrogen. Mulching sometimes can hold some nitrogen, so you need to apply more nitrogen than needed. Okay? But if you have a plastic, you need to punch some holes for water to enter as well. If you go with some cultivation, you need to make this very shallow so you don't hurt some of the apple roots. Herbicides, if you are into some chemical management of weeds, and sometimes you have to, I would say, why not? But you need to be very careful, okay? Apple trees are very sensitive to Roundup, especially at younger age, the first 2 to 3 years. And glyphosate can really cause some damage and can give you a severe injury to the tree. These are some examples you see here for the kind of glyphosate or Roundup damage. If you see something like this and you didn't apply any Roundup, it could be a drift from another location. It could be a drift from another commercial orchard or from your neighbor who started to apply it in a windy situation. Okay? Annual pruning of trees. Now we are done with training. After 3 years, you have a good structure of a central leader system with one central leader, permanent scaffold in 1 tiers or 2 tiers or 3 tiers around it. This is good. Winter pruning is not as much as you can expect. In winter pruning, what you need to do is remove any root suckers around the tree, remove hanging branches, broken limb, water sprouts, anything that can make a shade inside the tree. Anything that doesn't give you a good crop, you need to remove it. And you remove it by a thinning cut. It means you remove it from the origin of the branch. If it is attached to the trunk, you remove it without any stub, or if it is attached to a lateral shoot or a limb, you remove it completely without keeping any traces of it. Yes, you will hear about this hitting cut and the thinning cut, and you feel like you are lost. But frankly, these are very simple. we have only two cuts when we do some pruning in winter time. Heading cut and thinning cut. Heading cut is mainly shorten a branch by cutting it back part away. So you don't remove it completely, you just like make heading of the branch. Whether it is 1 year old, as we did it before when we started training the tree at planting time, this cut is called the heading cut. This stimulates vigorous growth and makes the tree much bushier. So you need to be very careful about this cut. We use it only when we need to fill a space and we need to have more vegetation. We use this type of cut. Otherwise, we don't use it. The second one is thinning cut. Thinning cut, it means you remove the branch all the way back to its point of contact. Whether the point of contact is the main trunk or the point of contact is the lateral branch or the scaffold. Thinning cut, calm vigor, open up the canopy. It is good for mature apple trees, okay? This is the main cut you are using. It also allows the light to penetrate very well inside the canopy. It gives you a good structure for the tree. This is the ones that you need to focus a lot during winter pruning. Oh, another thing you need to focus on. When you prune, you think about removing some branches and unwanted structure of vegetative growth. But also you need to have a crop. You need to have fruits. So you need to understand that there are two types of fruiting structures in apples. One type, one variety, some varieties we call it spare-bearing varieties. These trees form most of their flower buds and fruits in short, stubby spears that develop along 2-year-old or more. These are something like here. Okay? These called spears. The flower bud will be here. This will be giving you the flower and then the fruit. The other type of varieties, we call it tip-bearing varieties. They hold in the apical meristem, in the apical bud, this will be the flowering bud. You don't get any fruits from here. No fruits here, is only the apical bud. And this apical bud is hold on 1-year-old shoots from last year. So by knowing this, you will know that you cannot prune this one. I put an X here. You shouldn't prune this one. You shouldn't prune this one in this case. So if it is a spare-bearing variety like Honeycrisp, Red Delicious, Golden Delicious, Gala, you don't need to remove these ones. For Fuji and Pink Lady, they are tip-bearing varieties. You don't remove these structures because this will give you the crop next year, these ones. Okay? So this is something you need to keep in mind. You need to search if you have a new apple variety and you are not sure whether it is a spare bearing or tip bearing, you need to search about it before starting any winter pruning. Okay, so to wrap up all of this, in winter pruning, you need to think about heading cut and thinning cut. You need to know and formalize yourself with these two. You need to know that anything that is broken or damaged or diseased or water sprouts in the middle or root suckers, this should be removed without thinking. Anything that shades underneath, you need to remove it. If you have a kind of a branch that shades another branch, you need to remove it, okay? The third part is you need to know the type of your apple variety, whether it is a spare bearing or tip bearing variety, because this is very important as you start pruning. Oh, the part is that I don't like diseases. Nobody likes. As I mentioned, we are not fortunate in that regard in Virginia. We have a summer humid, a humid, warm summer that makes it easy for so many fungal and bacterial diseases to thrive. These are the major apple diseases. One is apple scab. As you can see, it is easy to distinguish. It is a general scab, dark scabby spots in leaves and fruits. This is mostly overwinters in fallen leaves. So if you remove the leaves from under the tree after harvest and in the fall time, this is a good management. Powdery mildew appears as real mildew on the new shoots, and you will find this about like a few weeks after bloom. Cedar apple rust is very characteristic for the rust we have in Virginia. The kind of rusty spots, very orange. You can see it a mile away. It is easy to distinguish from any other disease. Fire blight is a bacterial disease. This is very damaging and it can kill the whole branch, leading to killing even the trunk of the tree. This is the most serious one. It is caused by a bacteria called Erwinia amylovera. Bitter rot is a fungal summer fungal disease. It appears like this one in many circles around the fruit. It starts in a small spot, then expands later on. This is a fungal disease. It is very common after rain in the summertime. Sooty blotch and fly speck, these are, yes, they are superficial blemishes on the fruit, and it doesn't have anything underneath, but who will eat this kind of fruit? You need to do some kind of management. The major insects, yes, we have about like 4 or 5 major disease insects or pests. Well, the first one is codling moth. This one is famous for causing the worm in the fruit. So when you open an apple fruit and you find a worm inside it, this is mainly caused by codling moth. The larvae tunnels into the fruit and leaving something that is very distinguishable. You can see it and you recognize it. This is related to the codling moth. Apple maggots is another big one. These are small flies that lay egg under the skin of the fruit. And again, the larvae create winding tunnels inside. And growers usually use some ready stick tapes to monitor them and control them. Plum curculio is another one. It gives you it lays some eggs on the fruit as well and causing scares on the fruit surface. Aphids, especially rosy apple aphid. This one can distort shoots and cause killing leaves. And you have other types of aphids as well, like woolly apple aphid and green apple aphid. Then we have spider mites. This is another major issue, especially in dry conditions. When we have some dry conditions and drought weather, you have a lot of spider mites. So these are the major apple insect pests you can find in your home garden, and you are not alone in this. So these are the general home garden management, starting with sanitation. One part of sanitation, as I mentioned, apple scab is overwintering in fallen leaves, so you need to remove any fallen leaves and the fruits. Prune all cankers that has developed because of fire blight. During winter pruning, you need to remove these cankers as well. Okay, the other thing about management, select resistant varieties. We talked about some varieties are resistant to scab or rust or fire blight to some extent. Other management is dormant oil spray. You apply during winter time after pruning. This is a good management mainly for scale insects and mites because it suffocates the eggs of the mice and the scale on the tree. Later in the season, you can apply some insecticidal soaps and horticultural oils. This is good for aphids and mites. Pruning also is important because it reduces humidity inside the canopy, which lowers disease pressure. Finally, if you look for some chemical options, I think you need to consult local guidelines like our extension publication. It's called Entomology 603. This will give you some chemical options for management of the major diseases and insect pests that I just mentioned. The other part is that many people don't think about, but it exists very well in Virginia and it can lead to major damage, is deer damage, okay? These are the most, I would consider it one of the biggest wildlife challenges for apple growers, especially commercial growers. The deer, they can browse on young leaves. They can eat developing apples. Bucks rubbing their antlers can also strip bark from trunk, as you can see in the image here. This is deer damage. This is deer damage, okay? So it is really severe. It can cause severe damage to your orchard, especially young apple trees. There are some repellents, things like hot pepper spray or garlic or egg-based sprays. These are good. You can put some bars of soap as well. Some people even put some human hair, stick it to put it in some clothes and hang it on the tree, and it works. It works if there is no huge damage or there is a light deer pressure. But these don't work if you have hard or you have intense deer damage. These cannot work. What it works is fencing. Whether it is a long-term solution, or whether it is a kind of, for a whole orchard, you put fencing around it, about 8-foot woven wire fence. Or if you just like have one row or few trees, you can put electrical fence around it. Okay. The other thing is rapid damage, and you can consider it, it is not important, but really it is important, especially for home gardens or if you are closer to some wild or some wild forest around you. Rapid damage can be severe, really. It can, they can girdle the whole bark, and it can kill the whole tree. Don't take it lightly. Rapid damage is very serious. This is a kind of an example of rapid damage here. If you see this one, this is a rapid damage. Okay, and sometimes it can go even to this height here in the tree. And the bad part about it, it can girdle the whole tree around. So you don't have any live bark to provide any food for the root system. So after the whole girdling of the whole tree will collapse in one season. Okay. So the best protection for this one is to use hardware close guards around it. These should be made from 1/4-inch mesh with about 18-inch tall and buried at least 2 inches into the soil. This is the best way to do it. Okay, don't put it on the soil because rabbits can lift it a little bit and they can start girdling the tree underneath. Other alternatives could be also spiral or vented plastic guard around the tree, as I showed here in this image. And you put this one, and as the tree go bigger, you can replace it by a bigger size. But in my opinion, the hardware close guards is the best rabbit management strategy you can go with. The other thing about rabbit damage, and this will apply also to the mice and vole damage, is weed management. Weed management is the best thing to do to reduce any pressure from rabbits and voles, because they are hiding under the weed and around the trunk. Okay. Voles and mice, these are very important as well. It can be just as damaging as deers and rabbits. But the tricky part is that their damage often happen below ground when it is not too obvious, okay? They feed on roots and can girdle the crown of young trees, and sometimes you don't notice it until the whole tree collapses, unfortunately. The first line of defense, as I mentioned for rabbit damage, is cultural practices. You need to keep the grass and weeds mowed all the time, keep them short, and pull the mulch away from the base of the trunk, okay? So the vole or mice doesn't have any place to hide underneath. As I mentioned, some growers also remove the whole mulch in the fall time and put it back in the spring just for the mice management. As I mentioned, for the rabbit damage, you need to put some physical barriers around the tree, like a hardware close collars, or you put something like even a tree guard or something. But the trick here is you need to bury it at least 2 inches into the soil and extend it about like 12 to 18 inches above the ground. This is the best way to do it. What if I have a lot of mice damage? What if I see a lot of vole holes here or runaways in my orchard? And I need to use some chemical management like miticides. Yes, you can do it, but you need to read the label. You need to put it in a kind of a protected place so it stays away from any pets or other wildlife. The direct control, if you wanted to use some mouse traps, you can put mouse traps baited with some peanut butters or some apple slices. You put it into the runaways or into the holes here. This is very effective, by the way. Okay, now talking about the pollination and fertilization. What is the time now? Oh, 3:20. So apple pollination matters because apple trees are not self-fertile, okay? They require cross-pollination to set a fruit. In other words, you cannot grow one single apple variety and you expect to have any fruit crop. You need to plant at least 2 to 3 different cultivars at the same location, or at least you need to make sure that you have at least another tree 100 feet closer to your tree in order to get a crop. Not self-fruitful, it means that the variety can produce a viable pollen, but it cannot fertilize the same flower of the same tree. So in this regard, if you're growing a golden delicious, you need to grow another, not golden delicious. If you grow some variety like red delicious, you need to have at least another variety, golden delicious, beside it to be a source of pollen in order to get a crop. There is another tricky thing about apple pollination as well. Some varieties, we'll call it triploids, like stamen, or wine sap, or Jonah gold. These don't produce viable pollen. Their pollen is sterile. So even if you grow 2 of them together, they will not make any fruits because the pollen itself is sterile. So in these varieties like stamen and wine sap and mutsu and Jonah gold and Granny Smith, these varieties are triploids. You need to at least put some other varieties with them, at least 2 other varieties with these ones. The excellent pollinizer is always golden delicious. Golden delicious, people are using it as a commercial orchard and in home gardens as a source of pollen. Even if you don't need it as a main variety, you need to plant it as a pollinizer, a source of pollen. Other people are also using crab apple varieties like Manchurian and Snowdrift. These will be the source of pollen. These are good to have. They produce tons of pollen. They have a long bloom season, about like 4 to 6 weeks sometime. So these will be best pollinizers as well. This table here will show you the compatibility between different varieties. So as you can see here, cortland cannot pollinate or fertilize another cortland, but it can be used as a source of pollen for Empire or Fuji or Gala and so on. Finally, these are the resources I used to prepare this presentation, and these are resources that you can find in Virginia Cooperative Extension. We have the VCE Gardener Handbook. This will be your first source of information. You will find the same information I just mentioned in my presentation. We have extension Bob. It's called Growing Apples in Virginia. This is good for commercial growers and homeowners as well. Home grounds and animals. You will find a lot of management practices for weeds and for diseases. Tree fruit in the home garden. This is an extension publication specific for home gardens and the small orchard. Spray bulletin for commercial tree fruit growers. This is mainly the ones that I'm using for our commercial growers in Virginia. I'm sorry, apparently I took too much time, but I wanted to give as much information as I could in this webinar.
Thank you, Sherif. That's good. We appreciate the extra time. Again, sorry for the technical difficulties that we dealt with in Zoom and delayed things, but I appreciate your comprehensive review of everything. We do have a few questions in the chat that I'll throw out at you if you still are able to stay with us and answer a few questions. One was regarding growing trees in containers. Can some of the dwarf trees be grown in containers?
This is a very good question. I have tree in containers. I put them in about like 2-gallon root bagged trees, and I put them into the soil. And some of these are 25-year-old now. They are very fruitful, but I kept them in the ground. And they are on dwarfing rootstock. They can go up to 3 feet height, 3 feet tall, and they are very productive, as productive as any mature tree.
Yeah, I was going to say, I personally have seen some advertised as like patio pillar trees for containers at some of the big box stores and things like that.
But the question
as you're alluding to is hardiness of the root zone, right? Is going to be the question, surviving the winter.
Yeah, the other thing, I think the question could also indicate some people can use it indoors. No, you need to provide some cold requirement. Apple trees like Granny Smith and Golden Delicious and most of the commercial variety, they require something between 800 to 1,300 chilling hours. So you need to keep them outside at least for the whole time of the fall and winter time in order to get some chilling requirement before putting them back into to be indoors. Fertilization will be also important, pollination and fertilization.
We've got a couple variety specific ones. I'm going to skip those for now. We'll come back to those. Stephanie answered a question that Ed asked, but I think would be good for the whole group. Ed's asking or making a comment that many home gardeners would get fruit trees from local nurseries, big box stores, or even grocery stores, and that typically it's not going to be well labeled what that rootstock is other than just dwarf, semi-dwarf, standard. Would you suggest it's better to get it from a bare rootstock nursery or someone who is going to tell you exactly what that rootstock is?
Personally, if you go for major nurseries around us, like something in Pennsylvania, like Adams County Nursery, you will find tons of selections, not only for apples, but also for other fruits as well. And the good thing is they have a very good website, so you can get tons of information about which rootstock is good for what, and you will get the information that you wish. But I think they require at least 100 or more of trees to be ordered. I think they don't provide individual trees. and they don't provide any potted trees. They provide only bare roots. Okay, so yes, my preference will be to go to a kind of a major nursery and get it from there. It is more trusted. But if you are growing about like 2 or 3 trees in your backyard, I personally will go to any superstore and get it from Home Depot or Lowe's or any other supplies. And it doesn't matter for me what is the rootstock name. If I know it is semi-dwarfing or dwarf, that's it. If it is dwarf, I need staking around it. If it is semi-dwarf, I might stake it with a tomato stack for about 1 to 2 years. And once it has a structure, I remove it and it will be freestanding rootstock.
There was also a question about an abundance of nitrogen making the tree more susceptible to fire blight with the vigorous growth.
Yeah.
Just a clarification on that.
Yeah. So fire blight is a bacteria start first at the bloom time, and they enter the plant, the tree through the bloom, through the flower. They go into the nectar and they start feeding. And if there is no management, the bacteria can move from the flower into the nearest shoot because it is a little bit tender. So nitrogen cause lots of tender shoots at the beginning of the season. So if you have vigorous tree with tons of nitrogen and tons of tender shoots, the bacteria will be much easier for the bacteria to move from the flower to the shoot, causing a shoot blight, then moving from the shoot to the trunk or the scaffold, causing cankers. And it can lead to the death of the whole tree, especially in the first 2 years. Does it make sense?
You covered several mammal pests. There's a question in here on what to do against squirrels. I know they can be quite a menace in the home garden or when you just have a couple trees.
I didn't see a lot. I'm not sure, Mark, if you have seen any squirrel damage, really. Maybe they can go and pick some fruits, but
They'll steal the fruit. They'll
the
strip a
fruit, that's
tree.
it.
So you
Yeah.
almost have to net them, sort of like bird protection.
I think so. I think so. The stuff I concentrated on, including deer damage and rabbits and mice, it can kill the whole tree. Really. Even a tree that is about like 4 to 5 year old with a mice damage, it can be totally killed.
We had a couple questions in there specific to varieties. One about northern spies. Just wondering if there's more specific information available on that. I don't know if you have anything. I don't know that we have it in our VCE pubs, but there's certainly info available online about it.
Yeah, I don't have anything on mind. I don't plant it here in my research station, mainly because commercial growers are not interested, frankly.
It's more of an heirloom
Eh,
cider variety.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think it's good for eating as well as baking
It's
and
good for
cider.
baking. Yeah.
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 Um, Also asking about specific apple varieties from Germany that would do well here in Virginia. That's probably one that would take some more
Yeah.
some
More
more
serious.
research.
Yeah. 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 But you need to be careful with some varieties that coming from Europe. Some of these can flower for 6 weeks. What is the problem with this? They become very susceptible to fire blight because, as I mentioned, the bacteria start infecting at the bloom time, and that's why these varieties are very sensitive to fire blight. I know that some people here in Virginia, they brought a variety from France. I forgot the name of the variety. You remember it? The variety that was a kind of a magnet for a fire blight. It is for hard cider.
Um, was that the Hughes crab?
No, no. I will remember it once we talk. My
Sorry.
memory will bring it. So some of these varieties, they can bloom early in the spring, becoming very sensitive to frost. And some of these will bloom for about like 4 to 6 weeks. Uh, Keep blooming, I mean. and becoming very sensitive to blossom blight caused by fire blight.
And the final question in the chat that I see, and if there are others,
Definitely.
feel free to unmute yourselves. But in the chat, also from Christina, was a comment about in Norfolk, lots of city dirt and coal dust getting on the fruit. Is that a concern other than just washing it off and rubbing it off?
The variety is definite.
Oh, yeah.
It's from France, and I remember Keith Yoder showing me a tree after a tree after a tree infected by fire blight because it keeps blooming for forever. And it is a good variety for cider, and people like it. Anyway, for the dust and other stuff, it is not only about fruit quality. When you have a dust on the leaves, they will reduce photosynthesis. And when you reduce photosynthesis, it will weaken the tree, and this will affect the amount of the sugar and the color in the fruit later on. So either you can just like spray it by some water to clean it. This will be a very good for and light penetration and the photo assimilates to built in.
That's everything I'm seeing in the chat. Does anyone else have something to bring up? Well, thank you all for joining us. Again, apologize for the technical difficulties. Sherif, thank you very much for your time, your extended time. Apologize to you for those technical difficulties. Feel very bad about
No,
that.
that's fine. That's fine.
But thank you so much for a very comprehensive presentation. This is going to be good to have as an ongoing resource. So thank you.
Thank you for organizing this, Mark. And again, I don't know if there is an announcement coming for our pruning session or training. Among all the topics, I know people are here to hear about training of an apple tree. This is a very tricky part, and people find it challenging. And I wish to help.
Yep. So thank you. We'll be in touch.
Okay, sure.